Testing, 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 walking away. Yes, these will be going directly to Google Classroom. So your murmurings will probably show up on here, but that's about it. And probably for the next 3 or 4 years, these lessons will be used by next year's class and the year after that. On the summative assessment, it'll be a little bit longer, and there'll be a few more little details included. Like this, I might ask you to expand the factorial once on the test, just to show me that you actually understand what this means. You don't have to do it for every problem, but show me for one problem. Did you have this number, 166,320? Okay. Notice that these two have the same numbers. That was just to show the difference in the amounts. Which one turned out to be higher, the combinations or the permutations? Permutations. You should have gotten 720 for that one and only 6 for that one. It just shows you how important order is in some cases. If you're ordering things and putting things in certain slots or sections or giving them designations, then you're going to have a lot more choices. Once you start looking at groups, next to that, that's what you should be thinking about when you see combinations shown. Just groups of people without designations. That's the standard example that's given. Or committees. What's going to be important next week will be knowing when you're supposed to multiply and when you're not supposed to multiply. Details are going to be very important in this half of the year. For this one, did you get 1,050? If you're getting something different and you're not sure where it came from, come up at my desk when everybody's working on their homework. On the tests for this course, I want to see all the work. In discrete, I didn't really care how you got your answer on the summative test. I was only caring about the formative. For the summative test for this, I want to see all the work. For this, all the work entails showing me that. Did I give this group an FBI question? Yes. I'm still looking for the actual answer for it. I'm not really sure, because there wasn't a key given on the website. I might have to, I think I have to order an entire $80 package in order to find out what the answer is. I'm going to do it. I was going to do it anyway, so eventually we'll get to it. And what you'll see is that right now I've got it boiled down to 2 answers, and it's based on 1 or 2 words. You have to look for key words in this course. Lineup. Actually think about what's going on. You're putting floats in a parade. Does it matter if Charlie Brown is the first float or whether SpongeBob is? Yes, it matters who's first and who's second. When that matters, the lineup, that's really a synonym for order, which should make you think of permutations. Did we get 40,320? Choose 10 starters from a team of 23 players. Does it say what sport this is? No, we don't know what sport it is. We don't know what positions these players might play. We just know we got to group them together in a committee. So you should be thinking 23 combinations 10. You're choosing out of 23, you're choosing 10 at a time. Are we getting a giant number here? Of 1 million, over 1 million different ways. Words are going to be very important. Arranged. What's that a synonym for? Order. And you've got 14 books being placed 7 at a time. That's permutations. Even bigger numbers. 17,297,280. Team must send 4 captains. Did everybody choose combinations for this one? 20 students at a time. Some people got confused because captains showed up, and they thought that was a designation that was going to make it order. But do they mention any other type of designation? It's not like they're choosing a captain, a vice captain, a treasurer of the game, or a secretary of the game. They're just choosing 4 people. They just happen to call them captains. 4,845. Does everybody know how to enter these onto your calculator? Every calculator is a little bit different. You can always ask calculator questions, because we don't have an SOL test for this. And we're not going to have an exam. We're going to have a similar project, but it'll be 5 pages long. And we'll spend most of April and May doing that project. Okay. Keyword, groupings. We're doing the freshman grouping, and then we're doing a sophomore grouping. We're multiplying them. If you didn't write this down, write this down, and then box this in. Just look at that. Don't get too involved in all the formulas that you're going to see this year. Try to imagine the situation. How many people are being chosen from? 11. How many are you choosing at a time? Well, if you got 11 people and you want to choose one at a time, how many different ways can you do that? 11. You don't need to enter that into your calculator. That's going to be 11. Every single time you're choosing out of 11, you're choosing one at a time. So when you see combinations that have a 1 for the right-hand number, you know that this is the answer to that little combination problem. All of this turns out to be 11 times 84, which is 924. Last one. We were working backwards for this problem. I'm making a quiz. Imagine yourself sitting in a class. I need the least number of questions so that my 150 students, all of my students, get a different looking quiz. So you know it's going to be permutations. But you're not putting the 150 in here. You're trying to figure out what's going to give me 150 or more. Just do some trial and error. If you did 4P4, what does that equal to? I'll go for a calculator. What's 4 times 3 times 2 times 1?
4 times 3 times
5P5. Well, that's just 5 times 4 times 3 times 2 times 1, so just multiply that by 5. Is that enough? That's not enough permutations so that every single one of my students gets a different looking order on their quiz. What's 120 times 6?
It's really that one.
So we get 720 different ways, or we get 720 different quizzes that look different. So what's the actual answer to the question? What is the least number of questions the quiz must contain? Always answer what's being requested. We didn't care how many quizzes we ended up with. We cared how many questions it took to achieve what we were trying to achieve. Next page. If you're selecting different designations, let's say you're a parent, and Moises is going to be the referee, and you're going to be the sideline judge, and you're going to be the timekeeper. That's one thing. Well, couldn't I make you the referee instead of the timekeeper? That's different. So that, since that ordering is different, in that situation it would be permutations. Mean, median, mode. If you got something different, come up to my desk and figure out what little mistake was made. Some of you gave me an answer for number 15, like the mean is the best because it's the average. Well, that's like saying, I like the average because it's the average. It's a good average, and it's good. You're defining something with the word. How many people got this right? What did you write down?
Median represents it the best because there's an obvious outlier. It breaks down.
Some people chose the median, and what they said was that there was an outlier. What's the outlier here? 20? Now, it doesn't mean that they're necessarily right, but this is an opinion. They said median because it disregards the outlier, or it doesn't let the outlier influence the average. Circle all of these and write down these are all averages. We use the mean so often, we call it the average, but all of these are averages. These are numbers of central tendency. You're going to see that on next week's notes. But they're all considered averages. So when you need to give me an explanation here, don't use the word average. Some people said median because it disregards the outlier. The outlier is there, but when you're looking at the middle number, do you care what's at the ends? Did anybody say mode? You could have said the mode was the best because, is this a small list? In a small list, let's see, if you got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 people things and 2 of them are the same, that's a big chunk of your list. So you could have said the mode because this is a small list. That would have been okay. You could have said mean. How many people said mean and got this right? What did you put, Tyler?
I figured they take account all the salaries that was required.
The mean is actually the only one that truly uses every single number specifically to determine the central tendency. The other ones, this one is looking at the ordering of the numbers and trying to find the middle, but it doesn't technically use those numbers to create that. You're just looking for a positional central tendency. And the mode is only interested in the biggest one, so it kind of ignores a lot of what's going on. So that would have been a good explanation for me. That's the type of thing I'm looking for. Don't write down that the average is the average and that's a great average. Same thing here, as far as the explanation goes. These actual numbers, I wanted rounded to the nearest 10. So make sure that you're rounding to the appropriate decimal place, Alexis. And 10. Some people wrote that they liked the median because that was in between these two numbers. That's a valid explanation. Did everybody get 93 here?
Yeah.
What I do, before we move on from this, when I see this, an average of 75 for the 4 tests, in my mind I'm thinking this. I'm thinking about what would be the average of that. If you had 4 tests that were 75, what's that average? Then I would look for the total of that. The total of that is, what is it, 300? So every average of 75 has to have a total of 300, correct? If I'm going to add them all up and then divide by 4 to get my average of 75, this is what I'm thinking in my head. That what if everything was 75? Well, that would give me an average of 75. What's the total of that? That's 300. Therefore, 64 plus 75 plus 68 plus something has to equal 300. That's what goes through my mind when I'm seeing that type of question. Last page. I'll try not to put the letter Y into my next letter, in my next word. I said that Y was not a vowel, so if Y is not a vowel, then it would be 7 out of 11. For right now, just leave your answers in fraction form. You don't need to put a percentage yet. Later on, we'll deal with the percentages. How many hearts are in a deck of cards? There's 13 hearts. But one of those hearts is a king. So how many more kings do we add to this? Just 3 more kings. How many people added 4 kings? You double counted the king of hearts. 16 out of 52. On your test, I'm going to ask you to reduce. Make sure that you reduce. I don't know if you've seen the term complement of an event.
Yeah.
I know what.
We want, think of it this way. Complement is what is going to give us a total probability of 1. We want to complete the probability. So it's everything else. The only way I'm going to get a 1 is if I have 28 over 31. You're subtracting this from this. That gives you your numerator. The die is rolled 4 times. How many variations on a die? So if you're doing this once, it'd be 1 out of 6. A bag contains 6 red crayons, 12 purple crayons, 4 yellow crayons. You're selecting and then not replacing. Yellow. There's 4 out of 22. What's the probability of selecting the red if you didn't replace the first one? 6 out of 21. Some of you started cross multiplying. That's proportions. We're multiplying straight across here. 24 out of 462. That's fine, but I'd like it reduced, and I think it reduces down to 4 over 77. The probability section will be a little bit longer on your eventual summative assessment, but not too much, maybe 10 questions. Can someone get the lights for today's video?
I